What's up out there? Let's talk about Solo Self-Found. If you have any interest in playing it, here is going to be the 101, the basics, the getting started. I don't want to call it a guide, but just some things that I've learned, my experience with Solo Self-Found and things that I've learned. So let's dive in. First and foremost, you will want to select Solo Self-Found and check that box. You do not have to check that box. I played the entirety of Ancestors League in just regular League without trading. It was Trade League, but I didn't trade with anybody or party with anybody. The only difference, the biggest difference, there is a few differences, but the biggest difference when you check this box is that it just says you cannot trade and you cannot party up with other people. That's it. That's the big difference. There's some minor stuff we're going to talk about here in a second, but that's the big difference. So if you wanted to try SSF out, but didn't really want to commit to it, you can actually just play Trade League without trading with anybody. That's it. That's all there is to it. You won't show up in a different section of PoE Ninja, but if you select Solo Self-Found, you will be in that different section of PoE Ninja. But if you don't select it, you're just in Trade League. You can opt out and say, it's not for me. I'm just going to go trade. Makes it real easy. If you do check this box and you do start a character, there is a migrate. We'll talk about migrating a character here in a minute, but you have the option to migrate. So you have two choices to try SSF out. You can either try it in just normal Trade League and not trade, or you can actually start off in SSF and then migrate your character over to regular Trade League. Now, you cannot migrate your character forward, but you can migrate backwards. So that's the big difference. There are some minor differences if you toggle SSF. SSF is nothing special. You're not going to get a harder drop rate. It's the exact same game as Trade League. You just can't trade with anybody. That's it. That's the only difference. And one thing I had a hard time wrangling or wrapping my head around early on is why SSF existed. And somebody pointed out when you do race league and stuff like that, that checkbox means that you are not able to get assistance from anybody else. So when you're doing a race league, that signifies that. Or like me as a content creator, I can check that and say, this is SSF content. I'm not trading with anybody. That's the way it is. So if I was playing on my own without a channel, I'd probably just play in normal Trade League and just not trade with anybody. But there are reasons people love checking this. I'm one of them. I check this box because that signifies I'm playing SSF. And when I go to PoE Ninja and look up my build, it shows up in the SSF portion of the league. So I'm competing with those SSF people and, comparing my delve depth and everything and my DPS over to them instead of Trade League people that can just buy anything they want. So there's reasons for doing whatever you want. So that's basically the gist of it is if you check that box, it means SSF. Now, let's talk about stash tabs real quick. If you are like me and you go into standard and you start a character, you go up, you kill Hillock, you go into that starting area and you set up all your stash tabs, that only sets your stash tabs up for standard and Trade League. That's it. If you want to check this SSF box or play hardcore or whatever, I don't know about hardcore SSF. I don't know if that's a fourth iteration, but you have to set up your stash tabs for standard Solo Self-Found, and standard hardcore. Now I might need to do the fourth one, which is standard hardcore Solo Self-Found. But if you don't, and I ran into this last league when we had like the Calandra race league or whatever, I was starting it at SSF, but my stash tabs were all generic, the default colors, the default numbering on them and everything. And I kept wondering, why isn't my setup coming over? That's because I had to go under standard and set the SSF tag, run a character up through Hillock and into that starting area, and then organize my stash tabs there so that when I go into the current league and I select the SSF box there, now my standard SSF stash tab setup comes over. Unfortunately, you can't just do one stash tab setup and have it go to every future game mode. It doesn't work that way. You got to try all the different permutations and make sure it's set up for that. But I now have one set up for standard SSF, and standard hardcore. Now, I might still need to go standard Solo Self-Found hardcore. We'll find that out. But at any rate, I wanted to mention that about stash tabs because it is kind of a headache when you start a new league character out, check that box, and then your stash tabs are all the default numbering and coloring and all that. You got to go set it all up. If you just go in advance, set all that up under standard SSF, and then, you know, every time from that forward, you're set up and good to go. So something to be wary of there. Now, the other thing is, this was a big question I had last league because I wasn't sure if all of these characters would share the same stash. They do. I tested this last league and I'm playing this league and all these characters. So if I find if Jug Full of Boners finds an item, double-ended boner can actually equip it. It just goes right into my stash. I can pull it right out and equip it on that person. That was huge. If I couldn't have done that, I don't know that I would have gone SSF. If each one of these characters had their own stash space and I had to find all the items for each person individually, I probably wouldn't have gone SSF. But because these are all shared, you're fine. My thing was, what I was worried about was that if cannot party and cannot trade also went to your characters and not just partying and trading with other people. But if all of these are SSF characters, so all of these share the same stash space. So then we need to talk about migrating a character. So if I wanted to migrate Templar of Hatred here out, I could select the migrate button and he would go to the regular trade affliction league, however you want to call it. He would go out to just regular affliction league in the trade version of that. If I select migrate all, it migrates all of these characters out, all my goodies from the stash, all my Atlas passives, everything goes over. So this is what I was kind of getting at earlier. You could try SSF in two ways, either by trying it in trade league and not trading with anybody, or by going into SSF and then saying, I don't like it, I'm going to dip out, and then migrating everything, all your progress with you back to the regular normal league, normal trade league. So that is an option. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about real quickly here is your item filter. Now, I tried a lot of item filters in Ancestors League. I was just starting out. I was trying to find a filter that I liked. I tried, 3 or 4 of the different strictness levels you can get from Neversink. Pox had like 2 or 3 different ones for Righteous Fire. I tried some dude's SSF filter from the Path of Exile website. So there's Neversink that you can generate your own or use the default ones. Then there's the Path of Exile website. On that, at the very bottom, there's a section where you can go in and get filters from that. So I tried a whole bunch of different ones. I just couldn't find one that I liked. Either they showed too much or they showed too little, or they hid one thing that I wanted to see. And I didn't know enough about how to edit them. And if you're getting one, if you're just on the PoE website, if you go to that and you subscribe to them, you're subscribing to somebody else's. Yeah, you can make a copy of it and whatever, but if you're subscribing to theirs, you're relying on their filter to be updated and changed and all that. And I just didn't like the experience. And then one of the guys that I follow on YouTube did a video. He did like a big 2-hour video about how he edits his item filter. And it's real simple. You can go into with a text editor and then just change the word show to hide. Like, it's that simple. Your font size, you can change this to 45 is like old man huge. And then there's like 28 or something like that. That's really small and hard to see. He offered his filter up if you joined his Discord. So I joined his Discord, got a copy of it, and took that and I modified it heavily. He had several versions of it, but I took his filter and then went through league start, early maps, late maps, and all that. And I basically got it to this, what I'm calling level 85 filter. Basically, this is your very end game, late mapping, late game stuff. I made this one the way I wanted it, and then I walked it backwards to these other two. So my early mapping filter is essentially the exact same thing as this, except on this one, if I go look for crafting bases, this is the stuff that I'm looking for. I'm looking for these specific items. This filter is looking for everything that is greater than level 83. My early mapping filter is the exact same thing, but everything greater than 75. And my leveling filter I need to adjust because this one really needs to be everything less than 83. So all I did was I took my level 85 filter, and I either reversed the greater than sign to a less than sign, or I adjusted the level, the item level of that item to be lower, or I changed the show to a hide. That's it. That's all I did. Like I said, I took my filter all the way to the end game, got it exactly the way I wanted. I have certain things that I show quantities of 5 or above. I have certain things that I just hide. And then I walked it backwards and adjusted it for early mapping, because in this thing, I have basically the same idea, but this time I want to see a little bit more of the gear. And then the leveling through the campaign, I want to see every gem that drops. I want to see every portal scroll, every wisdom scroll, all of everything that I care about. I want to see all of it, because maybe I'm cruising along and I find a free gem with better quality or something than what I've got, or I find a gem that I could use later. I don't want to hide that stuff and just have it hidden. So I don't want one filter. I want filters that I can progressively use as I go. So that's why I have 3, and these are personalized to me and my needs and what I want to see. And I would highly recommend, if you're going to play SSF, try to do this. Try to set your filters up the way you want them. Editing this in a text editor is super easy. Neversink seems like it might be a little bit convoluted. I love the concept of it and being able to see it live without having to reload your filter, change something in here, save it, and then reload it in the game. I like the idea of Neversink. It just seems too much for me when you could just go in here and change some font sizes and colors and stuff like that pretty simply. And once you get all this set up and the base of it done, and you could copy the Neversink filter out and just go in and adjust the text of it. In fact, some of the unique stuff that I've gotten, I actually just kicked out one of the Neversink ones, copied the unique portion of it that I liked out of it, and then the rest. This is kind of like a combination of Pox's filter, the Neversink filter, and then this one YouTuber's filter. So it's just different pieces of it. Like, I didn't like the YouTuber's filter. He had certain colors for uniques I didn't like. I like the uniques to drop and have the same plaque, the color, the text, and everything that looks like a unique. So he had different colors for that. I found Pox's thing where it talked about the uniques, and I made that here. And then I grabbed the Neversink stuff because they hide certain things that, the low tier uniques and stuff like that. So this is a mixture of several different ones to get it tailored to me. I would strongly recommend that you actually tailor one up to yourself, because you may want to see certain things. You may not want to see certain things. The filters that you can subscribe to or the filters that you can get from Neversink are not necessarily they're more generic and they're more trade focused. They're not necessarily SSF focused. A lot of people don't like to see portal scrolls. I love to see portal scrolls. I don't have to pick every one up. I can just visually say, okay, portal scroll, I can ignore it. But there are times that, as an example, I've ran out of portal scrolls because I was trading them for gems or something like that. There's a trade that I used early on that I burned out all my portal scrolls and I didn't have any. So now I either had to go to the next waypoint in the campaign, or I had to log out or hoof it all the way across the map to get out. I don't like doing that. I'd rather just drop a portal and get out. So these things can be incredibly valuable at certain times. So I like to see all of those. Now in my later portion of like my end game filter, I have that set to show only 5 or more, and same thing with wisdom scrolls. I don't see all the singles. I think even the alterations and transmutations, I'm seeing like stacks of 5 or above. But I've tailored that filter, and I really recommend tailoring your own, because the filters you find are either geared for Trade League, or there's an actual SSF filter you can get, but like all the items are pink or something. And I really didn't like it. It rubbed me the wrong way all the way around. I didn't care for the coloring on it. I didn't care for what it hid and showed and stuff. It just really wasn't for me. And once the YouTuber that I follow made a video about how he edits his and gave his away, I took his, and you could just do the same thing with Neversink. You don't have to have anything fancy. Just copy out one of the Neversink ones and then edit it in a text editor and tailor it to yourself. So, you can certainly try all the different filters you want. You're probably going to find out that they're more geared towards Trade League and maybe a lot more advanced players that aren't necessarily looking for the same things you are in SSF. So set your own item filter up. Now, the big question you're probably going to sit here and ask is, how do you generate currency? If you go to YouTube or Google or whatever and search up currency, making bank, making money in Path of Exile, The answers you're going to see range from, oh, go down into Delve and sell everything on the Trade League. Go into Heist and sell everything on Trade League. Go in and kill the Maven and sell the invitations on Trade League. Like every answer you get is going to be do something and sell it on Trade League. That has no application to SSF at all. So all of that goes out the door. What you're limited to in SSF is what drops on the ground. That is basically how you get currency in SSF. There is no way to trick the game into giving you more, because the same rules that the standard Trade League has are the same rules that SSF has. Now, GGG may change this at some point and do something different, but as things currently are, the only difference between Trade League and SSF is that you cannot party up and trade. That's it. So your RNG is the same, your chances of dropping something are the same, it's all the same, and you have to go get your own stuff. As far as I'm concerned, a Divine is nearly worthless because I don't ever find very many of them. And in fact, last league, I had an Immortal Flesh that I'd burned like 3 of them on and almost bricked my gear. It made my gear worse every time I used a Divine, and I got it kind of sort of back to where it was, but it was still worse than where I started. So you will find yourself actually using the currency in the game for what it's intended for rather than trading for it. But be careful, if you don't have a big stack of Divines sitting there and you start burning through them, you may actually make your gear worse, meaning your build is worse. Now, Divines actually do have a use, and they are good. If you go over here to, if I type the right things, you can use Divines for suffixes cannot be changed or prefixes cannot be changed. That actually locks your gear for a crafting thing. Exalts are in here. Fizz damage. Where's it at? This one here. This one costs an exalt. There are a few things that cost exalts. So it's not that they're worthless, but they're very rare, and exalts can add stuff to your, like if you only have, you can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, but if you only have like 2 of one and 3 of the other, an exalt will add an additional one. So if you wanted to fill out your gear, you can use an exalt to add one. You can use exalts in the crafting bench. You can use divines in the crafting bench. But like a Mirror of Calandra may as well not exist. I'll never get one, or if I get one, I'll probably get one and I'll never use it. Good example, this Sacred Orb. I found exactly one of these. I know it says it randomizes the numeric values of base defenses on an armor. I get what it says, but what it says and what it does in my mind might be 2 different things. I like to actually try it, but because I've only ever found one of these, I will probably never try it. Maybe at the end of the league or something. I don't know. If I get a second one, I might try it. Ancient Orbs don't do what I thought. When I read this, it says reforges a unique equipment as another of the same item class. When I read that, I saw the word unique, and I said, what if I can change a map to one unique map to a different unique map? Well, you can't. If you read this closely, it says the word equipment, which means armor, gloves, belts, stuff like that, shields, swords, whatever. So I like to try things, and if you run that on a unique map, it actually tells you it's the wrong base type. So I actually like to test those out. Now, there are certain harbingers. You can get orbs of annulment. You basically get annulment shards, and you get ancient shards. You might get the full thing, but with harbingers, they drop exalted shards, they drop annulment shards, they drop ancient shards. I think they drop chaos shards. Occasionally you'll get a chaos, or usually you'll get like regal shards, but occasionally you might get a regal, you might get an exalted out of it. But as far as getting actual currency from league mechanics, probably harbingers are about the only one. Running any league mechanics has a chance to drop a divine at any point in time. You could drop any of this stuff at any point in time. There's not one that's better or worse, aside from the ones that I mentioned. Harbingers are kind of the exception. From what I've found, there's not really any good drops. Now, I say that, but then Beyond drops this tainted stuff, except Beyond is very rare to have happen in your maps, and the currency to drop from the Beyond is even more rare. I spec'd into Beyond for, a few weeks of this league, and I didn't really get much more currency than what's here. Maybe, let's say you double this, and that's about what I've gotten. Compared to, I've gone through, 100 or 150 regret orbs, or probably about that in unmakings. I don't know. I've gone through a lot because I've changed my Atlas tree at least 6 or 7 times. I've tweaked out different things here and there. I've regret orbed from one side of Juggernaut to the other, and then back again. Like I've done that. I've regret orbed a lot on my Perforate build, a lot on my Slayer build. I've used a lot of regret orbs this league, a lot of the unmakings. And if you know how the currency gets, if you go to the vendor to buy unmakings, you use regrets. So regret orbs can be sold for unmakings. To get regrets, you go to scourings. I think scourings are bought from chance orbs. I think some things like chaos you cannot get from vendors. You just get them from drops or whatever. Like I said, ancient orbs, annulments, and all that come from harbingers. If you have an item that is it has a red socket, a green socket, and a blue socket, it's called an RGB. If those are linked, like this is red, red, green. If this was red, blue, green, or whatever, RGB, if you have that combination and they are linked, that trades at the vendor for a chrome. You get a chromatic orb for that. So all those things I pick up and trade those off. Not necessarily all of them. These, if I need to make room in my inventory as I'm out looting, the stuff that converts to chromes are usually the first to go away, but I try to get as many as I can. Last league, I ran into a huge problem trying to get my red socketed strength gear to have enough blue sockets for Righteous Fire. And basically, if you go over here and you want to do, let's see, blue, if I want to try to get at least 3 blue sockets, that's 120 chromatics. So 1,000 of these things sounds like a lot, but it's really only 10 rolls of 2 reds and 1 blue. So if you put it in the crafting sense, this stack is like 1 pull of the thing over there. So yeah, there's 148. That might seem like a lot, but it's not really. I had 1,000 of these things at one point. I burned them all off trying to change this thing blue. Orbs of fusing. If you take a 6 linked item, 6 linked, that becomes 20 orbs of fusing. If you have a 6 socketed item, like this is 6 sockets, even though it's linked, it's not 6 linked. This gives you 7 of these Jeweler's Orbs. So I pick up pretty much everything that gives me Jeweler's Orbs, fusings, and chromatics. Now, you're not going to find a lot of 6 linked items. You're going to find a lot of 6 socketed items. I grab them all. I don't care how much inventory space they take up. I grab them all and I trade them off. You don't have to necessarily play poverty like that, but I do. It just helps out. When I needed 1,500 of these fusings to make this thing 6 linked, I took a whole ton of these Jeweler's Orbs. I took like 3,000 of them and converted them over to a few hundred of these fusings. I did that, or I did 1,000 or 2,000, whatever it was of the Jeweler's Orbs to get a few hundred of the fusings. Like the conversion rate's horrible, but if you have a big pile of these, they can become these that then can be used to craft up the 6 linked item on that. Gem Cutter's Prisms. These come from gems of 40 gems totaling 40% quality. So if you take 2 20% quality gems, that's 1 Gem Cutter's Prisms that you can get out of the vendor. You go trade it off to Lily here and you can get that. If you have 4 10% gems, you can trade them to her for 1 Gem Cutter's Prisms. So on my filter, this is another example for what I've customized on my filter. I only see everything that is 5%. I only see gems 5% quality or higher. I don't want to see anything less. I don't want to take 40 gems to make 1 Gem Cutter's Prism, but I'll do 5 because 5% is easy to work out in my head mathematically. And then, like this is 7, 8, whatever. You can just keep popping those things in until she gives you a Gem Cutter's Prism if you need one. And as I've, tried to get my quality on some of these gems up, I don't necessarily like running Labyrinth all the time. In fact, I really don't like it. And if I run one I don't like, I'll just take these GCPs and apply them right to my skill gem. Then I don't have to worry about it. Or if I do get like 18% quality out of that place, I can put the other 2% here, and that comes from saving up gems. Before I forget about it, another one is flasks. You can save up, take flasks with quality. Those trade for these glass blowers baubles if you need those. And kind of the further idea about value of currency. Like regals are fairly decent to have because you can work on, you know, transmute a normal item to a magic item and then run alterations on them, and then you regal them and you go from there. You get some exalts and whatever else all in there. Alchemies are good. I ran short on these earlier. Chaos orbs are always good to have. Divines are not bad to have. I will never complain about having one, but they're rare. They're not easily found. These orbs of binding, I have yet to ever use one, and I've got a ton of these things. Unmakings, regrets, scourings, those are always useful. Blessed orbs have their use to change your implicits, but you know, you can see I'm building up a stack of those. Whetstones and armor scraps, those are a dime a dozen. These instilling orbs, these things are, when you're just setting up all your flasks, those things are a premium, and you'll find yourself running short on those a lot. I don't know of a good way to get them, otherwise you're just seeing them drop. So aside from RNG and vendor trades of certain items, the only other thing you can really do is divination cards. So if I go all the different ones, like if I get another one of this Sea of Blue, I can get 13 orbs of alteration. There are some in here for divines, like this one here. There's just random currency ones. And one of the things that I learned last league is that you can actually target farm certain divination cards from certain maps. So an example is the ties that bind, or the chains that bind, whatever it's called. I think it's the chains that bind. Should be right in here somewhere. Right here. This one here. This drops in Affliction League right now. This drops from the Cage map. That's the only place it drops. In Ancestors League, there was like maybe 3 or 4 maps that it dropped from. So I ran all those different maps to get 11 of these to get a 6-socketed item, 6 linked body armor. I've gotten a few of these because I've been running a lot of cages trying to get my 6 link here. This thing kept giving me armor and I need armor and evasion, and it was giving me like armor and energy shield and stuff like that. Like I never really got anything good out of it. In fact, probably armor, energy shield, evasion, energy shield. Like neither one of these is good. One of these probably came from chains that bind. I don't know. So anyway, you can get Vol orbs. There's all kinds of different stuff. Here's one 6-link astral plate. If I go for this celestial Justicar. So this is not necessarily currency, but in SSF you have to find everything. And if you know that it's possible to target farm certain div cards from certain maps, there's a website that tells you where they're at. If you go to the wiki and look up the individual div card, it will tell you what maps that drops on. You then have to go into the current league and figure out which maps are there and which ones aren't. It's a process, but like level 3 Enlighten comes from this. If I get those, I don't know, you can get corrupted maps, you can get various items, catalysts, stuff like that. Like there's a whole ton of options here. Do not sleep on div cards. These are huge. They give you a lot of cool stuff and you can target farm them. So video might have gone on a little bit long, but we're going to wrap this up because that's pretty much all I've got. So to sum everything up, SSF means you cannot trade or party with anybody else. If you want to try SSF out, you can certainly try it out in normal trade league, just don't trade with anybody. You can also try SSF and migrate your character out if you want to. Stash tabs, make sure you set up your SSF stash tab in standard before you start an actual league character so that it's all there. We talked about migrating your character out. It's in my opinion, it's in your best advantage. It's to your advantage to set up an item filter specific to you and your needs. And as you play SSF, you will figure out that you want to see more and you want to see less. The filters that are out there on Filter Blade or Neversink or wherever they're all at, PoE website, I don't really like a lot of them myself. I like the one that I rolled because it's tailored to the build that I've got, the stuff that I want to see, and the stuff that I don't want to see. So I would highly recommend learning the process of setting up a filter because I don't really feel like there's a good SSF filter out there. There are SSF filters, there's at least one. I just didn't like it. And then as far as currency goes, there is no easy way to get currency because if there was, it would be in Trade League. The stuff that if you watch videos about Trade League currency making, they don't necessarily apply, although certain aspects of them might. Like I got the idea of burning off maps that I don't like to maybe go get Delve Sulfite or something like that. And if I don't like fighting the boss on it, there's one map, I can't remember what it is, but I hate the boss because it's the campaign map where you got to kill the 4 bosses and then go fight the one put together. I don't like that map, and I always have it just takes so long. So basically I'll burn that one off to go get Wildwood stuff or something. I just don't care about it. But there are things you can learn from watching videos about Trade League, but the Trade League money-making secrets do not apply to SSF. You do have vendor trades you can take advantage of, and there's a lot more vendor trades than what I talked about. I'm just talking about the ones that I use the most. And then div cards. Div cards are always a great option. So hopefully that has helped out in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully this is you found this useful. I do have another video planned for SSF. It is going to be talking about the Atlas tree and how I traverse through the league with my Atlas tree. It's kind of a planning session for what I want to do next league, as well as a recap of what I did for this league. But there were some things that I learned as I went through this league that I'm going to apply to next league. So even though it's kind of like a brainstorming planning session for what I want to do next league, it's also something you could follow for your own use in how to get certain items, like when to start farming essences, when to start get the 5-socketed map device, stuff like that. There's a lot of different, there's like a little path you could do. I'm going to show you my path, and I'm going to have a video of that here soon, but that's future content. So that will do it for this video. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.